Night has already settled gently over the old town. Not the kind of night that arrives suddenly, but one that drifts in like a soft breath, touching rooftops and stone walls until everything agrees to rest. Lanterns have long since dimmed. Wooden shutters lean closed, not with urgency, but with familiarity, as though they have done this 1,000 nights before and know there is no need to hurry. Imagine walking slowly now, along a narrow street paved with smooth, uneven stones. Each step makes almost no sound. Even the echo seems reluctant to follow you, choosing instead to remain curled in the quiet air. The buildings on either side are close, intimate, their upper floors nearly touching, as if sharing secrets above your head. The air smells faintly of old wood, extinguished candles, and something herbal, lavender perhaps, tucked carefully into linen folds somewhere nearby. There is a stillness here that feels earned, not forced. A stillness that comes only after centuries of people learning when to speak, and when to let silence do the work. This is a medieval town, long asleep, and yet it remembers everything. Time, in places like this, does not rush forward. It settles into layers like dust on shelves, like pages in books that no one opens anymore but never throws away. Tonight you are not here to study those pages. You are here simply to walk among them, to let them surround you without asking anything in return. If your thoughts feel busy, that's all right. Let them walk beside you for now. They will slow down soon enough. Ahead, the street opens into a small square. At its center stands a church, modest, solid, patient. Its bell tower rises into the night sky, not ringing, not calling, just standing as it always has. Even in silence, it reminds the town of order, of rhythm, of the gentle rules that once shaped every day and night. In this world, long ago, nothing truly belonged to only one person. Not time, not space, not even sleep. Bedrooms were close to kitchens. Beds were shared not only by couples, but sometimes by children, relatives, or guests passing through. Curtains were thin, walls listened. Privacy, as we know it now, was a rare luxury, and yet there was comfort in this closeness, a sense that one did not face the night alone. As you move through the square, you notice how everything feels proportioned for human life. Nothing is grand for the sake of being grand. Everything exists to be used, to be repeated, to be remembered through habit rather than spectacle. This is a place built on routine. Morning bells, midday meals, evening prayers, and finally, the quiet rituals of night. Somewhere nearby, a household prepares for sleep. You cannot see them, but you can imagine the familiar motions. A candle pinched between fingers. A flame shrinking into smoke, heavy wool blankets folded back. Linen sheets cool at first touch, carrying the faint scent of dried herbs placed there weeks ago. Beds in this time were not only places of rest, they were symbols of order, of continuity, of belonging. To lie down was to accept the rhythm of the world, and the world, in return, held you. As you continue walking, the town seems to breathe with you. Slow in, slow out. Nothing demands your attention. Nothing pulls you forward too quickly. Even curiosity feels softened here, like a candle turned low. And yet, there is something else beneath the calm. Not danger, not tension, just awareness. In medieval life, rules existed quietly, like the church tower behind you now. They were not always spoken aloud, but everyone felt them. Laws about work, about worship, about family, about when to rise, and when to rest. Even the most private moments were gently guided by customs that had been passed down for generations. Not to control, but to steady. If you lived here, you would not question these rhythms. You would grow into them the way one grows into the sound of rain on a familiar roof. They would become the background music of your life. And perhaps that is why nights felt so heavy with meaning. When everything follows a shared pattern, rest becomes an agreement between the body and the world. Pause here for a moment. Notice how your own breathing mirrors this place. Slower now. Deeper, more forgiving. If you'd like, let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw loosen. There is no one watching. No rule to follow, just the gentle permission to be. Above the rooftops, the night sky stretches wide and untroubled. No electric glow interferes here. Stars appear one by one, not competing for attention, simply existing, steady, ancient, familiar. People once believed those stars watched over the town. Not judging, just witnessing, and perhaps they still do. At the edge of the square, partially hidden by shadow, you notice something small, a narrow passageway, easy to miss. It leads away from the familiar routes, winding between houses older than memory. Most people pass it every day without thinking. But tonight it feels quietly inviting, not urgent. Just open. A place where stories drift more freely, where habits soften, where the night holds something it has been waiting to share. Gently, patiently. We will walk there soon. But first, before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Tedious History for Sleep. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Take one more slow breath. The passageway waits. And beyond it, a softer understanding of how people once rested. Together under rules that felt less like walls and more like lullabies. When was the last time you looked up at the night sky and felt at peace? We'll continue slowly from here. The narrow passage opens without ceremony. There is no gate, no sign. Just a subtle narrowing of space, as if the town itself leans inward here, inviting footsteps to soften, thoughts to quiet. The stones underfoot feel older somehow, smoother, worn by centuries of the same gentle motion. People moving not with urgency, but with belonging. As you walk, the air changes. It grows warmer, carrying the faint scent of beeswax and wool. Somewhere behind thick walls, a fire has burned low but not gone out. The sound of it is barely there, a whisper of embers settling into themselves. This is where homes turn inward. Windows are small. Light, when it appears, does not spill, it glows. Curtains are drawn, not to hide but to cradle warmth. Inside these rooms, life has folded itself neatly for the night. In medieval times, sleep was rarely a solitary act. Families shared rooms, sometimes beds, sometimes only the same breath of air. Privacy, as we imagine it now, had not yet become a need. Instead, there was a quiet reassurance in proximity, the steady presence of others anchoring the night. A bed here was not a retreat from the world. It was part of it. Beds were often built into the structure of the room itself, wooden frames heavy and unmoving, filled with straw or feathers, layered with linen that carried the stories of many seasons. Lavender, rosemary, or dried flowers were tucked into seams not for romance, but for calm, and for protection against restless thoughts. The bed knew its purpose. It was where the day was gently released. If you pause now, you might imagine stepping into one of these rooms. The ceiling is low, beams cross overhead like slow thoughts. The walls hold warmth from the day, and the floor feels solid beneath your feet, reliable, unquestioning. A candle flickers near the bed, its flame already tired. Shadows move slowly, stretching, then returning to stillness. Someone has said a quiet prayer earlier. Not out of fear, but habit. The kind of habit that smooths the edges of uncertainty. In this world, nights were structured. There were times for rest, times for closeness, times for restraint. The rhythm of sleep was shaped by calendars and customs, by feast days and fasts, by bells that marked not only hours, but expectations. And yet, none of this felt harsh. Rules here did not shout, they hummed. They moved like a background melody, always present, rarely questioned. They told people when it was time to lie down, when to rise, when to wait. And in doing so, they removed a certain burden from the mind. When boundaries are shared, the body can rest. As you imagine the room settling into sleep, notice how nothing dramatic happens. No moment demands attention, no decision needs to be made. The day has already ended. Tomorrow will arrive when it chooses to. This is a kind of safety we often forget. To not decide, to not perform, to simply follow. Breathing slows naturally in places like this. The body listens to the environment and agrees with it. Even thoughts seem to grow heavier, less interested in moving. You might hear soft sounds now, a shifting blanket, a wooden bed frame sighing as someone turns, the distant call of a night bird outside. None of it interrupts. It all belongs. In medieval households, the idea of the night was not filled with expectation. There was no pressure to sleep perfectly, no fear of insomnia. Rest was allowed to arrive gradually, like a guest who knew the way. And if sleep did not come immediately, that was acceptable too. People lay awake. They listened. They waited. Time, after all, was not something to conquer. It was something to inhabit. Let your mind rest on that thought for a moment. How often do we rush ourselves towards sleep, demanding it, measuring it, worrying over it? Here, none of that exists. The night does not judge the body for staying awake. It simply holds it until it is ready. In these rooms, generations passed through the same motions. Children grew, elders aged. Lives unfolded quietly between the same walls. The bed became a witness, not to drama, but to continuity. And perhaps that is the most soothing thought of all. That nothing is required of you tonight. That the night does not need to be productive. That rest is not a performance. As you linger in this imagined room, notice how the candle finally gives up. The flame bows slightly, then disappears. Darkness does not rush in. It settles gently like a blanket placed with care. The room does not disappear. It remains, felt rather than seen. And somewhere beneath that calm, a soft curiosity stirs. If rest was once shared, if rules once guided even the quietest hours, what did people believe they were protecting in the night? Not control, not obedience, but order, continuity. A sense that life, when held gently, would continue to make sense in the morning. Ahead of us lies a deeper understanding of those beliefs, not as restrictions, but as rituals designed to keep fear at bay and hearts steady. We will explore them slowly. For now, let your breathing fall into rhythm with the room. In and out, nothing is expected, nothing is missing. Here, no one rests alone. Every story is a soft lantern in the dark. Beyond the quiet rooms, beyond the soft weight of shared sleep, there existed something even more subtle. It was not spoken often and rarely questioned. It lived in gestures, pauses, and the shared understanding of when to begin and when to wait. In medieval life, the night was not empty time. It was structured gently like a woven cloth, whose pattern repeated itself night after night. People trusted that pattern, and in trusting it, they found rest. Customs shaped the hours after dusk. Certain days were meant for closeness, others for restraint. These rhythms were guided by seasons, by faith, by the quiet agreement of the community. No one needed to announce them aloud. Everyone already knew. This knowledge did not feel heavy. It was carried the way one carries the memory of how to walk home in the dark. The body simply knew where to place its steps. Imagine the calendar hanging on a wall nearby. It is simple, handwritten, its pages thick and slightly uneven. Marked upon it are days of celebration and days of reflection, woven carefully into the passing year. These markings influenced more than meals or prayers. They shaped how people understood their own bodies. Desire itself was not something separate from daily life, but something that moved in time with it. There were nights meant for stillness, nights meant for closeness, nights when the world seemed to pause, inviting everyone to breathe together a little more slowly. In this shared structure, uncertainty softened. When choices are limited, the mind often relaxes. There is comfort in knowing that tonight does not require a decision. You may notice how that feels in your own body now. When expectation fades, muscles loosen, breath deepens, thoughts lose their sharp edges. These rules were not written to excite or restrict. They existed to steady, to remind people that life unfolded in cycles and that every phase would pass naturally into the next. In a way, they functioned like a lullaby sung by the entire community. Repetitive, predictable, soothing. The kind that allows even restless thoughts to finally settle. Consider how different that is from the modern night. So many choices, so many demands, so many quiet pressures waiting even in the dark. Here, in this older world, the night closed gently around everyone at once. It did not ask who you were or what you wanted to become. It simply welcomed you as you were. In homes like these, the pause mattered as much as the act. Waiting had value. Restraint was not absence, but presence held gently in reserve. There is a strange peace in that idea. That not everything must happen immediately. That some things grow deeper when they are allowed to wait. As you listen, you might feel your own thoughts beginning to drift. That is natural. This story does not need your full attention. It is content to keep you company, whether you follow every word or let them blur into sound. Outside, the town remains still. The church bell does not ring. The streets do not stir, even. The stars seem fixed in their places, content to watch without intervening. People once believed that such order kept chaos away, that by aligning their lives with a shared rhythm, they could rest without fear of the unknown. Whether that belief was true matters less than how it made them feel. It made them feel held. And feeling held, the body learns how to let go. If you wish, take a slow breath now. Let it fill your chest gently, without effort. Then allow it to leave just as slowly as if you have nowhere else to be. In these nights long past, rest was not something earned. It was something given. Something expected. Something shared. Even wakefulness had its place. To lie quietly beside another, listening to their breathing, was not seen as failure. It was part of the night's design. Time did not rush those moments. It allowed them to stretch, to soften, to dissolve naturally into sleep when they were ready. As this understanding deepened, people carried less tension into the darkness. They trusted that morning would come, that the world would still be there, that their place within it remained intact. Perhaps that is the soft discovery waiting beneath this history. Not rules, not control, but reassurance. A reminder that when life follows a gentle order, the heart does not need to stay alert. As you rest with this thought, the town around us seems to fade slightly, not disappear, just recede like a memory becoming less defined at the edges. What remains is the feeling, the rhythm, the quiet permission to stop trying. Ahead, there is another layer to explore. A tender realization about how these customs shaped not only behavior, but identity itself. We will arrive there slowly. There is no hurry. For now, stay where you are. Let the night continue to hold you. As the night deepened, something quiet happened within the people of this world. Their sense of self loosened slightly, no longer standing apart from the rhythm around them. Body, time, and place began to feel like parts of the same gentle whole. In medieval life, the body was not seen as a private island. It was understood as something shaped by seasons, customs, and shared expectations. What the body did, and when followed a larger clock than personal desire alone. This may sound strange to modern ears. We are used to thinking of the body as deeply individual, governed by personal choice and inner impulse. But here the body listened outward as much as inward. Days of fasting taught patience. Days of celebration invited closeness. Between them stretched long nights where nothing needed to be decided, only accepted. This acceptance carried a certain softness. When responsibility is shared, the mind releases its grip. The body no longer braces itself against endless choice. People trusted the calendar. They trusted the bell. They trusted the quiet signals passed down through generations. In doing so, they rested more deeply than they knew how to explain. Imagine lying in one of those beds again. The straw mattress shifts gently beneath you, firm but forgiving. The weight of blankets feels familiar, almost protective. You are not alone in this room. You are not separate from the night outside. Everything feels aligned, like gears turning slowly but surely together. Even thoughts follow this pattern. They arise, pause, then drift away. There is no urgency to finish them. In this world, memory worked differently too. Moments were not archived as sharp images, but as sensations. The smell of herbs, the hush after prayers, the feel of wooden beams cooling as the fire died. These memories did not demand attention. They lived quietly in the background, ready to surface only when needed. Perhaps that is why people seemed less troubled by wakefulness. To be awake at night was not to be alone with one's thoughts. It was to share the same stillness as everyone else. Some nights, a person might lie awake listening to the breathing of others. The rise and fall of chests became a kind of reassurance. Proof that life continued gently, even in rest. There is something deeply calming about shared breath. Even now, centuries later, the sound of someone sleeping nearby can ease a restless mind. The medieval night understood this instinctively. It did not isolate. It gathered. As you rest with this idea, notice how your own breathing may be slowing. Not because you force it to, but because the story invites it. Nothing here needs to be resolved. Nothing needs to be understood fully. The mind can float between words, catching only what feels pleasant. Outside, the sky continues its silent turning. Stars shift almost imperceptibly, tracing paths, too slow to follow. Time moves, but without pressure. People once believed that aligning oneself with this larger motion brought peace. That by surrendering to cycles beyond the self, anxiety softened, and in many ways, they were right. When the body knows what to expect, it stops scanning for danger. When the night feels predictable, the nervous system relaxes. These old customs, so often misunderstood, were not only about order, they were about rest. Rest from uncertainty. Rest from isolation. Rest from the burden of constant choice. There is wisdom here worth holding gently, not as instruction, but as invitation. What if rest does not come from doing more, but from trusting what already exists? What if calm arises when we allow ourselves to be part of something larger than our own thoughts? Let those questions drift without answers. They are not meant to be solved tonight. The town around us feels even quieter now, as if it too has settled into a deeper layer of sleep. Sounds are fewer. Spaces feel wider. You may notice that the images in your mind are becoming softer, less defined. That is a good sign. The story is doing its work. Soon, we will reach a tender realization. A gentle turning point where understanding opens not with surprise, but with recognition. For now, remain here. Let the rhythm carry you. If tonight's story reminds you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below, whenever you feel ready. Here, no one rests alone. Every story is a soft lantern in the dark. As the night settles further, something begins to reveal itself. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but the way understanding often arrives, quietly, when the mind is no longer pushing for answers. These old rules, these gentle frameworks of night and rest, were never meant to punish the body. They were not built from suspicion or fear of desire. Instead, they grew from a deeper concern, the need for steadiness in a fragile world. Life in the medieval town was uncertain in many ways. Harvests could fail. Illness could arrive without warning. Winters could stretch longer than expected. Against this backdrop, predictability became a form of comfort. When much of life felt uncontrollable, shared structure offered relief. Knowing what came next, even in the quietest hours, allowed people to rest their vigilance. This is the soft discovery hidden beneath the surface of history. The realization that many customs were less about restriction and more about reassurance. To modern eyes, some of these rules may seem intrusive. The closeness, the shared spaces, the absence of what we now call privacy. Yet for those who lived within them, these boundaries created a sense of belonging. Nothing felt arbitrary. Everything had its place. When a community agrees on rhythm, individuals feel held by it. There is less need to guard oneself against uncertainty. The night becomes a shared experience, not a solitary challenge. You can almost feel that ease settling into the body. The shoulders soften. The breath evens out. Thoughts slow. no longer scanning for what they might have missed. In this world, the future was not something to plan in bed. It was something that arrived when it was ready. Tonight was for rest, not anticipation. Consider how rarely we allow that now. How often the night becomes a space for unfinished thoughts, unanswered messages, unmade decisions. The medieval night asked none of that. It offered a pause that everyone agreed to take together. This agreement carried a quiet power. When everyone rests, rest becomes safe. When everyone slows down, slowing down feels permitted. And so the body learned to trust the dark. There's something profoundly calming about knowing you are not falling behind. That nothing important is happening elsewhere. That the world, for a while, has agreed to wait. As you listen, notice how that idea lands within you. The sense that nothing is being missed. That this moment, exactly as it is enough. The town around us seems to lean into that stillness. Roofs, walls, and streets all participate. Even the night air feels thicker, more settled. Somewhere, a distant animal shifts in its sleep. Somewhere else, the sleep returns, then grows still again. These small movements do not disrupt the night. They are part of it. In medieval understanding, the body was not separate from its environment. It responded to cues, light, sound, routine, with quiet obedience. In return, it found rest more easily. Perhaps this is why so many people today find comfort in routines before sleep, dimming lights, repeating familiar actions, creating signals that tell the body it is safe to let go. These instincts are old, older than our screens, older than our clocks. They echo from places like this town, where nightfall meant surrendering to a shared calm. As this realization settles, it brings with it a gentle shift. A turning point, not in events, but in perspective. The rules no longer feel like rules. They feel like arms around the night, keeping it from unraveling. And with that shift comes relief. You may feel it as a subtle warmth in the chest, or a heaviness behind the eyes, or simply a growing disinterest in holding on to thoughts. That is perfectly fine. The story is not moving toward a conclusion. It is widening like a horizon at dusk. There is more space now, more air between ideas. Soon, we will explore how this shared rhythm shaped not just nights, but the way people understood themselves within time. How identity softened when it was less isolated. But there's no need to hurry there. For now, stay with this feeling. The feeling of being supported by something larger. The feeling of rest not as escape, but as belonging. If this story has brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself, a quiet marker of where you paused tonight. The town continues to sleep. The rules fade into background hum. What remains is peace, simple and unadorned. Let it linger. As the hours passed in this sleeping town, identity itself softened. People did not think of themselves as separate stories unfolding alone. They were threads in a larger fabric, held together by repetition, memory, and shared time. Who someone was did not change dramatically from night to night. There was comfort in that continuity. To wake and sleep within the same rhythm meant never having to redefine oneself too often. Names mattered, but roles mattered more. Daughter, neighbor, baker, caretaker. Each role came with an understood place in the day, and an equally understood place in the night. When night arrived, those roles loosened, titles faded, expectations quieted. What remained was simply the body at rest, breathing in time with others nearby. This was not a loss of self. It was a resting of self. Imagine how it might feel to carry your identity lightly, to set it down at night like a coat hung carefully by the door, to trust that it would still be there in the morning. In medieval life, this trust was not abstract. It was reinforced daily, the same streets, the same faces, the same bells marking the same hours. Nothing rushed you to become something else overnight. This steadiness shaped how people related to time. Time was not something to outrun or optimize. It was something to inhabit slowly, like a room you knew well enough to walk through in the dark. At night, that room grew quiet. Thoughts that might have pressed forward during the day found no reason to do so here. The future could wait. Even ambition softened under candlelight. Dreams did not need to announce themselves. They could remain folded like letters not yet opened. You may feel that gentleness now too. A loosening of the urge to define, to plan, to solve. The night invites you to exist without explanation. There is healing in that. The medieval understanding of self did not demand constant introspection. People did not ask endlessly who they were becoming. They trusted that becoming happened on its own, shaped by time and repetition. This trust carried into sleep. To sleep was to participate in the same cycle as everyone else. It was a shared pause, a collective exhale. Even those who lay awake were not outside the rhythm. Wakefulness had its place. It was simply another way of being present in the night. If you find yourself drifting in and out of attention now, that is perfectly aligned with this story. You are not meant to hold on to every word. Let some phrases pass through without stain. Let others settle briefly, then fade. This is how memory works when it is gentle. Outside the imagined room, the town seems almost suspended, as if time itself has slowed its turning, allowing everyone to rest a little longer. In such moments, identity becomes less rigid. You are not defined by what you do, or what you think, or what you have yet to finish. You are simply here, breathing, listening, existing. This state was familiar to people long ago. They did not name it, but they lived it nightly. It was the space where worry loosened its grip. Perhaps this is why the night felt sacred. Not because it demanded reverence, but because it offered relief. In darkness, differences blurred. Social hierarchies softened. Everyone lay beneath the same sky, wrapped in the same quiet. There is a deep comfort in sameness when it is gentle. In knowing that others are resting as you rest, dreaming as you dream. As this realization settles, the story widens again. It no longer focuses on rules or customs, but on something more universal. The way humans have always sought safety and rhythm. The way shared patterns soothe the nervous system. The way repetition can feel like care. You may notice your thoughts becoming less linear. Images may appear and dissolve without sequence. That is the mind letting go of structure. There is no need to follow it anywhere. Soon we will arrive at a calm expansion. A moment where the story opens outward, connecting these quiet nights to something timeless and enduring. But there is no urgency in getting there. For now, stay with this sense of belonging. This feeling of being one presence among many, held gently by the night. If tonight's story has slowed you down, allow it to continue doing so. There is nothing else you need to attend to. The town sleeps. The self rests. Time moves without asking. We will continue when you are ready. As the town sleeps more deeply, memory begins to move differently. It no longer marches in straight lines or sharp images. Instead, it drifts, folding past and present into something softer and more forgiving. In medieval life, memory was not something stored deliberately. It lived in repetition. In familiar streets walked every day. In prayers spoken so often they no longer required thought. In nights that followed one another with reassuring sameness, the night became a quiet keeper of all this. It held the day gently after it ended, smoothing its edges before letting it fade. Nothing needed to be resolved before sleep arrived. People trusted that what mattered would return on its own. You can sense that trust now, lingering in the air of this story. There is no pressure to remember every detail. No fear of losing something important if attention drifts. Memory here behaves like a tide. It comes in slowly, then recedes without urgency. What remains is not detail, but feeling. The warmth of a shared room. The comfort of familiar sounds. The reassurance of knowing tomorrow will resemble today. These impressions settled into the body more than the mind. They became part of how people slept, breathed, and woke. Imagine lying still, eyes closed, while the mind wanders gently through fragments. A voice from earlier in the day. The texture of bread broken at supper. The low hum of conversation fading into silence. None of these images demand anything. They pass through like clouds, leaving the sky unchanged. This is the kind of memory the night encourages, one that does not cling, but flows. In modern life, we often try to capture memory, to record it, to hold on to it tightly. But here, memory was allowed to soften with time. What stayed was what mattered. Perhaps that is why the medieval night felt so complete. It did not ask people to review their day or judge it. It simply absorbed it, layer by layer, into a larger continuity. As you listen, you may notice your own memories stirring. Not vividly, but gently. A room from long ago. A familiar voice. A moment that carries warmth without context. Let it come if it wants to. Let it go if it fades. There is no need to follow it. The night does not demand engagement. It offers presence. Outside the imagined walls, the town seems almost unreal now. Less a place than a feeling. Streets blur into pathways of memory. Buildings soften into shapes of familiarity. This is how history survives when it is gentle. Not as dates or events, but as atmosphere. The past becomes a place you can rest inside, rather than a story you must understand. People long ago may not have spoken of healing, but they practiced it nightly. By returning to the same rhythms, by trusting repetition, by allowing the night to hold what the day could not. There is wisdom in that simplicity. When memory is not forced, it becomes kind. It no longer startles or overwhelms. It sits quietly beside you, like an old friend who does not need conversation. You might feel your thoughts becoming less distinct now. Words may blur slightly. Images may overlap. This is not loss of focus. It is a gentle deepening. The story is inviting you to listen with your whole body, not just your mind. If sleep begins to approach, you do not need to resist it. If wakefulness remains, that is fine too. Both belong to the night. In medieval understanding, there was no strict boundary between resting and sleeping. The night was a wide space, accommodating many states of being. Lying awake was not failure. It was simply another way of passing time quietly. As this perspective settles, the night feels even safer. There is no wrong way to be here. Soon, we will move toward a calm expansion. A widening view that connects these quiet nights to something enduring and timeless. But for now, remain with the feeling of memory as something soft and benevolent. Let your breathing stay slow and unforced. Let your body rest in whatever way feels natural. The town continues to sleep. The night continues to remember, and you are held gently within it. As the night stretches on, time begins to behave differently. It no longer moves forward with purpose or direction. Instead, it seems to widen, creating space rather than distance. In this medieval world, time was not counted in minutes. It was felt through light and shadow, through sound and silence, through the body's quiet agreement with the dark. The absence of clocks did not create confusion. It created trust. People knew when it was time to sleep, not because something told them to, but because everything around them softened at once. Candles burned lower together. Voices faded together. Bodies grew still together. Time here was communal. There is something deeply reassuring about that idea. That time is not something you manage alone, but something you move through with others, even when they are asleep. In such a world, the night did not feel endless, nor did it feel short. It felt complete. The hours did not need to be filled. They needed only to pass. As you rest with this thought, notice how your own sense of time may be loosening. Perhaps it feels less important to know how long you have been listening, less necessary to track where you are in the story. This is exactly how the night prefers it. In medieval towns, the dark was not resisted. It was welcomed as a necessary counterpart to the day, a balancing force that allowed life to renew itself. When daylight demanded effort, night offered permission. Permission to stop, permission to forget, permission to exist without striving. People trusted this exchange. They gave themselves to the night, knowing the morning would return them gently. That trust shaped their relationship with time. Time was not an enemy. It was a companion that moved at different speeds, depending on what was needed. During work, it moves steadily. During rest, it's slowed to match the breath. You can feel that slowing now. Thoughts arrive with less urgency. They do not insist on being followed. They simply appear, then drift away. The story no longer asks you to imagine specific places or people. It becomes more atmospheric, more spacious. This is intentional. As time slows, details matter less. Sensations matter more. The warmth of the bed, the weight of the blanket, the quiet presence of the night itself. Even history fades into something softer. No longer a sequence of events, but a feeling that lingers. This is where calming storytelling does its deepest work. It stops giving the mind things to hold and begins offering things to release. If you notice gaps between thoughts now, welcome them. They are not emptiness, they are rest. In medieval understanding, these gaps were sacred. Silence was not absence. It was fullness without noise. Nighttime was filled with such fullness. A quiet density that held everyone equally, regardless of status or story. The baker slept as deeply as the Lord. The child rested beside the elder. Differences dissolved under shared darkness. This equality brought peace. When the world pauses together, comparison fades. The need to measure oneself against others disappears. There is nothing to win in the night. You may feel that relief now. The relief of not having to be anything in particular. Time does not rush you forward. It sits beside you, content to wait. Outside, the stars continue their slow movement. They do not hurry. They do not change course. They simply follow paths laid out long before anyone was watching. People once found comfort in that steadiness. It reminded them that not everything depended on human effort. Some things could be trusted to unfold on their own. As this idea settles, it brings a gentle calm, a sense that life does not need constant supervision. That rest is not irresponsible, but essential. The medieval night taught this lesson quietly, every evening, without words, without instruction. It simply arrived, and people responded by letting go. You might notice now that the story feels less linear. That is not a mistake. It mirrors the way time feels when we are close to sleep. Moments blur. Sequence loses importance. What remains is sensation. If sleep comes for you here, allow it. If not, remain where you are. The night holds both states with equal kindness. Soon, we will approach the final soft expansion. A gentle opening that connects all of this, the town, the rules, the night, the slowing of time, into a single quiet understanding. But there is no rush toward that moment. For now, let time continue to slow around you. Let the story become background rather than focus. You are safe here. Nothing is expected. Nothing is missing. The night knows how to carry you. By now, the town has almost disappeared. Not because it is gone, but because it no longer needs to be seen. What remains is the feeling it left behind, like warmth lingering after a fire has burned low. This is often how understanding arrives in the night, not as a clear conclusion, but as a gentle settling. A sense that something important has been absorbed, even if it cannot be easily named. The medieval night did not offer explanations. It offered experience. It shaped people not through instruction, but through repetition and presence. Over time, those nights taught a quiet truth, that meaning does not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply stays. The rules that once framed life so carefully now feel distant, almost irrelevant. What mattered was not the structure itself, but the calm it created, the way it allowed people to rest without fear. In that calm, something essential was preserved. A feeling of continuity, a belief that life, even when uncertain, followed a rhythm that could be trusted. This belief softened the edges of worry. It allowed the body to relax into sleep without scanning the dark for danger. You may feel that softness now, a gentle heaviness, perhaps, or a sense that thoughts are no longer forming with the same sharpness as before. This is not fading, it is settling. As the night deepens, the story no longer needs to move forward. It begins to circle, like a slow current returning to its source. the town, the rooms, the shared breath of sleeping bodies. All of it points toward the same quiet realization. That rest is not something we create, but something we allow. In medieval life, people did not try to master the night. They yielded to it, and in yielding, they found peace. There is something profoundly healing in that posture, to stop pushing, to stop organizing, to let the night take over. Perhaps this is why sleep stories work so gently on the mind. They do not demand attention. They offer companionship. They sit beside you, not in front of you. They do not pull you forward. They stay with you until you are ready to let go. As you listen now, you may notice longer pauses between thoughts. Moments where there is nothing to say internally. Nothing to respond to. Those moments are not empty, they are full of rest. The medieval knight understood the value of such pauses. Silence was not awkward, it was respected. In silence, the body recalibrates. The nervous system settles. The heart finds a slower rhythm. This is happening now, quietly, without effort. You do not need to focus on the words anymore. Let them become texture rather than meaning, sound rather than story. If an image appears, let it drift. If it fades, let it go. Nothing needs to be held. The night is wide enough to carry everything on its own. People long ago trusted this. They trusted the dark to keep watch while they rested. They trusted the morning to arrive without being summoned. That trust is still available to you. Even now, in a different world, under different skies, the same night exists. It still knows how to slow the breath. It still knows how to quiet the mind. As this understanding settles, there is no grand insight to announce, no lesson to underline, only a feeling remains. A gentle warmth, a sense of being accompanied. Here, no one rests alone. Every listener, every sleeper, every quiet mind is part of the same shared pause. If you are still awake, that is perfectly fine. The night is patient. It does not rush. If sleep is approaching, you do not need to notice the moment it arrives. It will take you without announcement. Before that happens, let one final thought drift through gently. The most beautiful things often arrive in silence. And the most healing moments rarely ask to be remembered. They simply happen. If this story brought you calm, you may leave a gentle comment for yourself below. A small, kind note placed here for another time. And if you wish to continue these quiet journeys, don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime stories. For now, remain where you are. Let the night do the rest. The night has carried us far now. Not across distance, but inward, toward a quieter place where effort is no longer required. The medieval town no longer needs description. It has become a feeling rather than a setting. A sense of calm order that lingers even as the images fade. What remains is stillness. This is how nights were meant to end. Not with conclusions, but with release. Not with answers, but with permission to stop asking. In that older world, no one rushed to the end of the night. Sleep was not an achievement. It was a gentle drifting away from the day. The body knew how to do this without instruction. When the signals aligned, the dark, the quiet, the shared pause, rest arrived naturally. Perhaps that is what we have been remembering together. Not history as a list of facts, but history as a rhythm the body still recognizes. You may notice now that even this thought feels like it can dissolve. That words are becoming less important than the space between them. That is exactly where the night leads. In medieval times, there was no clear line between listening and sleeping. Stories, prayers, and quiet thoughts blended into dreams without ceremony. No one announced the moment sleep began. It simply happened, like a candle finally going out after burning all it needed to burn. You do not need to stay with the story any longer. It will not be offended if you leave it behind. It exists to keep you company only until you no longer need company. If you are still awake, let your attention soften. You do not need to follow each sentence. Let them pass like distant footsteps fading down a stone street. If sleep is close, you may already feel it at the edges, a heaviness behind the eyes. A warmth spreading through the body, a gentle loosening of thought. There is nothing to do now. The night is wide. The time is slow, and you are exactly where you need to be. Long ago, people trusted this moment. They trusted the dark to hold them without harm. They trusted morning to arrive without effort. That trust still works. Even now, the world continues quietly while you rest. Nothing important is being missed. Nothing is falling apart because you stopped paying attention. The night knows how to take over from here. If you find yourself waking briefly later, remember this feeling. The sense of being held by something steady and kind. You can return to it any time simply by slowing down and letting go again. Before the story fades completely, one final gentle reminder drifts through the quiet. Here, no one rests alone. Every listener is part of this shared pause. Every breath joins a rhythm older than memory. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below, whenever you feel ready. And if these calm journeys bring you comfort, don't forget to subscribe to Tedious History for Sleep, where peaceful stories wait patiently each night. For now, allow the silence to deepen. Allow the story to disappear. Allow yourself to rest. The night remains, and it will stay with you.